This is the story of how love turned into my most painful weapon, and how I learned that sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to rise above it while watching the betrayer crumble under the weight of his own deceit. When I first met Daniel, I believed in goodness. He was calm, attentive, and had the kind of charm that made everyone feel safe around him. I was finishing my degree then, juggling part-time work, and he seemed like the one stable thing in my uncertain life. He talked about building a future together, whispered promises about how he'd always protect me. For years, I believed him. I built my world around his words. We married in a small ceremony, nothing fancy, but it felt perfect to me. I had no idea that the same man who kissed my forehead that night would one day be the reason I questioned my own worth. The cracks started quietly: missed calls, late nights explained away by extra meetings, and a new obsession with money. He said he was investing in opportunities for our future, and I wanted to trust him. That was my biggest mistake. 2 years into our marriage, I noticed our joint savings dwindling. When I asked, he smiled and told me he'd moved the money into a higher return account. I believed him because I wanted to believe that love and honesty came together. But soon after, I began noticing small inconsistencies, emails hidden, strange transfers, and a sudden coldness in his eyes when I asked questions. Then came the night that shattered everything. I was doing the laundry and found a receipt tucked in his jacket pocket, a jewelry purchase that wasn't mine. My chest tightened as I turned it over. The date was 2 weeks earlier, on the night he'd said he was working late. My hands trembled, but instead of confronting him right away, I chose silence. I needed to know the truth before I destroyed myself with guesses. Over the next few weeks, I quietly gathered every piece of evidence I could find. I checked phone records, emails, bank transactions. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Not only was he having an affair with a woman from his office, but he had also been transferring our savings into a private account he shared with her, under a fake business name. The same man who once held my hand and promised forever had been stealing from me to build a life with someone else. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt an unfamiliar calm wash over me. It was the moment when love finally died and something colder replaced it: clarity. Revenge was not a decision made in rage. It was born in silence, nurtured by disappointment, and sharpened by every lie he had ever told. I spent the next month pretending everything was normal. I cooked, smiled, asked about his day, and even laughed when he made jokes. Inside, I was mapping my escape and his downfall at the same time. I opened a new bank account in my name only and began moving small amounts of money into it each week. I met with a lawyer discreetly, documenting every fraudulent transfer and collecting proof of his infidelity. I didn't want a messy fight, I wanted precision. When the time was right, I executed my plan. I told him I had an opportunity to invest in a friend's small business and asked if he could help me understand some paperwork. He agreed, eager to show off his financial expertise. I watched him explain numbers he barely understood, and in the process, he signed a document that confirmed all of his previous transfers as unauthorized actions under my name. It was perfectly legal, carefully worded, and witnessed by my lawyer. He didn't even read it, his arrogance blinded him. A week later, I told him I was traveling to visit my mother for a few days. In reality, I moved the last of my belongings into a small apartment across town. I closed our joint account, froze his access, and filed the legal complaint that made every fraudulent transaction trace back to him. I sent copies of the documents to his company's compliance department, where his affair partner also worked. When I turned off my phone that night, I didn't feel hatred, just release. I knew by morning his entire world would unravel. The calls started the next day. First came confusion, then anger. He shouted, accused, pleaded. I said nothing. Then silence stretched between us like a canyon. Within a week, he lost his job for misuse of company funds. The woman he'd betrayed me with left him when the investigation began. And I, the quiet wife he had underestimated, stood in my own apartment with my own savings and a freedom he could never touch again. People often think revenge is about destruction. It's not. True revenge is about reclaiming the parts of yourself someone tried to erase. It's about walking away so completely that the person who hurt you can no longer define your story. Months passed before I saw him again. It was at a grocery store, of all places. He looked smaller somehow, his suit wrinkled, his confidence gone. He approached me hesitantly, trying to smile. "You look good," he said. I simply nodded. He tried to apologize, saying he'd lost everything and that he now realized what he'd thrown away. I looked at him and felt nothing. Not anger, not pity. Just a quiet satisfaction that justice had already done its work. I told him, "You didn't lose everything, Daniel. You gave it away, piece by piece, every time you lied." And I walked away without looking back. That night, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in years, I felt peace. I didn't need anyone's apology, because my closure had never depended on him. It came from knowing I had taken back control of my life. When people hear my story, they often ask if I regret what I did. I don't. Revenge was never my first choice. It became my only option when love, trust, and respect were gone. What I did wasn't about punishing him. It was about freeing myself from the shadow of a man who used my love as a weapon. Today, I run my own small business. I travel, I laugh, and I love again, carefully, but without fear. I tell my story not because I'm proud of the pain that led me here, but because I want others to know that survival doesn't always come in the shape of forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes in the form of quiet justice, where the truth finally stands taller than the lies. And that's how I learned that when revenge became my only option, it wasn't really about him anymore. It was about me, reclaiming everything he tried to take, and finally stepping into the light he thought I'd never find.